And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at the Pathfinder Adventure card game, Rise of the Runelords base set. Pathfinder is probably my favorite of all the different role-playing games that I have played. I do not play role-playing games much because they have a very big time investment involved in them, and you know, I play board games mostly. So I was really excited to hear about this. It was designed by Mike Selinker. I think he's a good designer. I heard that it had deck building elements, which kind of it does. But I was really excited about it. I also knew that it was made by Paizo, and Paizo has an excellent track record at supporting their products. They do a very good job at it, and like for Pathfinder, there's so many cool things that you can get for it, and I was hoping they would do the same for this. This has also been in development for a long time. Gen Con, it was my biggest release I was interested in. Well, was it worth it? Let's take a look. As you can see, there is a lot in this game. So before we jump into all the stuff here, let's take a look at this really gigantic box. Now the way this box is, it has room for all the different decks of cards. And over here, you can see that the different cards are split into different types. Here's weapons, these are spells, these are henchmen. Up here we got items, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So this box has rooms for all those decks. And then it has room for the dice here, and you'll be using these dice over the game. I have to say though, I'm a dice connoisseur, I suppose. These are really generic dice. I will be replacing them. Not only will I be replacing them in this game, but I'll be adding like 5 sets because you use these dice the whole game, so you're going to need to pass them around. Interestingly enough, the game comes with this Burnt Offering Adventure deck inside it, and you can place these here and put the cards in, although I'm not really sure really what the point of putting these in here is. I'm just going to chuck mine. It just seems odd. And then you can also buy this character add-on deck, which I'm just including in here because it adds 4 more characters. So you can see you can stack these up in here. And then over here, as you build characters, and if they survive from one game to the next one, they'll get experience, or they'll get different cards as time goes by, and so you can store their decks in here. It's a pretty cool box, obviously way too big for the game at this point, but that's because they have expansions scheduled up the wazoo. There's already 2 more scheduled for 2013, at least. You can even subscribe to them on the Paizo website. So you look at these characters here, and these characters are mixed from the ones from the base set. I believe there was 6 in the base set, and then 4 in that add-on pack. But each character, they come basically straight from the Pathfinder thing, and you can see this is a card that you will use as your character. So when you're moving around, this is the card that you'll use, and it might tell a little bit of story about the card. But more importantly is this card here. This card is the card that gives you all the information that you will need. It tells you, if you can see here, it tells you that Kyra here, when she's using strength, she uses a 6-sided die. When she's in fighting and melee, she gets +2 to that. For dexterity, she uses a 4-sided die. For constitution, she uses a 6-sided die. Unless it's a fortitude check, then she adds 3 to that. For intelligence, a 6-sided die. Wisdom is her strength, a 12-sided die. And if it's divine wisdom, she gets +2. And charisma, she gets a 6-sided die. She's also proficient with light armors and heavy armors, has a couple special abilities here, and has a hand size of 5. There are many missions as you progress through here where you will go up a level and then you're able to check off one of these boxes. Now, that will probably hurt some people's sensibilities to actually check on these cards. I suppose you can use erasable markers or put them in sleeves and use erasable markers. So there's all that. On the back of the card, it shows the cards that she's allowed to have in her deck. She can have 2 weapons, 3 spells, 2 armor, 1 item, 1 ally, and 6 blessings, although those can go up again as time goes by. And it also shows that she has a favored card type here of Blessing, and we'll talk about that. Now, you can build your decks at the beginning of the game any way you want. When you're first playing, you have to pick cards that say basic. So let's say, for example, I can put a weapon into my deck. I can put this quarterstaff into my deck. I can look down here and see what the powers of this quarterstaff are. When I'm making a combat check, I can show this card to roll my strength die plus, or melee die plus 1d6. And I can discard the card if I want for an extra d6. So there's different weapons throughout the game. Some of them, like this one here, is not a basic. A Star Knife is an elite weapon. The Short Sword +1 is also an elite weapon. So not everything you can use from these different decks. So you're going to put together a deck of cards for your character. And if you can't figure that out, or you don't put the time to it, in the back of the rule book they have suggested decks, and you just pull the cards for those characters. Once everyone's pulled their cards for their characters, you will take the rest of the cards from each of these things and you'll shuffle them, basically having one of each type. So I'll have the different types here are items, allies, spells, weapons, armor, blessings, and then the other stuff is kind of used in the different scenarios. If you notice, I didn't mention that there was another card next to each character. Once you get to a certain level, you can add something else. For example, the Lem here is a bard, but he can eventually upgrade to a charlatan or a virtuoso, which will give other special abilities and things. So there's a lot of room for growth in this game. You're not going to want to just play it once or so. What you're going to do in the course of this game is you're going to pick either an adventure path or a scenario. So let's say you pick a specific scenario. You will take the scenario card. So here's the introduction one for the game, Brigand Doom. So Brigand Doom is one of the introductory scenarios. The first thing you'll do here is you'll see how many players you're playing with. And let's say we're playing with 4 players, then we're going to set up the following locations. You can see that you'll set up prison, academy, wooden bridge, farmhouse, waterfront, and woods. If I was just playing with 1 player, I would use just the first 3 locations. And it also tells you a little bit about this scenario. On the back, it tells you what some special abilities to the scenario, what the reward of the scenario is as time goes by, who the villain is, and who the bandits are. So what you'll be doing is you will pull out each of the locations for this scenario. So let's say the scenario here includes the woods. All right, this is one of the locations in this scenario. I will now make a woods deck. I can see here that a woods deck has 4 random monster cards, 2 barriers, 1 weapon, and 2 items. There's no blessings, allies, or anything else. I will shuffle all those together and make a location deck. And I'll do this for each location. I will then bring in the big bad guy. In this initial scenario, it's Jubrail Visky, but there's Gogmord and Blackfang and Pillbug Potiker. And that guy will bring with him some henchmen. These are bigger, badder guys. So, for example, his henchmen are bandits. But there's all sorts of henchmen. There's ancient skeletons and wrathful sin spawn and goblin raiders. And you will take these guys and you'll shuffle them. And this could change based on the scenario. But here, at least in the basic scenario, we shuffle all these guys, him and his henchmen, and you're going to put 1 in each location pile, then shuffle those locations. So you know that this bad guy is out there in one of those decks, but you don't know where. You do know that if you're in a deck and you find one of his henchmen in that deck, that he's not in that deck, that he's probably somewhere else. So these location decks will be placed all over the board. Players are going to start with their characters at a location deck. So let's say here's a location deck here. This is the woods. You will then, you can put your character there. You can put characters together because characters can work together when they're at a location and different things can happen. There's cards that you can have that we use. You'll draw cards to your hand size, and then you will go through a turn. You can actually give cards from your hand to somebody else. This is a full-on cooperative game, of course. But your main thing you'll be doing is you'll be having encounters where you turn over the top card and having an encounter. Now, if the encounter is an item, let's say I found this holy water here, you then just have a skill check to see if you get that holy water. And so here I have Linny, and I'm sure some of you will email me to tell me how I mispronounced her name. So I look at her card, and this is a Wisdom Divine skill check of 8. She rolls a 10-sided die for Wisdom, but she also has a +1 on divine checks. Well, hooray. Now I can play other cards from my hands, but let's say I don't. Let's just say I roll the 10-sided die, I rolled a 4 +1, 5, I don't get it, and so it goes away. Had I gotten it, I would have added it to my hand. Now, most of the players are going to start with some basic blessing cards. These cards are in your hand, and you're going to be using these cards quite a few times. Sometimes, most of them will be blessings of the gods, and you'll be able to play them to add dice to checks. So you might add an extra die to a check, or you can discard it to explore twice at a location. They'll be used a lot, but you discard these cards. And what's important about this game is your life is your deck of cards. So when you run out of your whole deck of cards, you are essentially dead and out of the game. So you have to be very careful about discarding cards. When you come across an enemy, you have to fight that enemy. So here I would have to fight this Goblin Pyro. I would look at his combat skill. He's 8. I see that after the encounter, he'll deal 1 fire damage to me. So I want to really try to beat him. So I look at my combat skill, which is probably melee. I might be able to use a weapon from my hand. So let's say here that Lenny is fighting with a long sword. So unfortunately, she doesn't have a very good strength at all. It's a 4-sided die. But hopefully this long sword is greater than that. She's going to roll that plus a d6. That's what the long sword shows. Oh, a d8. No, it's better than a d6. But she can discard the card to add an extra d6. So we'll do that. We're going to throw the sword at the guy. And so we roll, and we've rolled a 1, 5, 8. Whew! We got the guy. Now, had we not gotten an 8, let's say we got a 6, we would have lost, and he would have done 2 damage. We would have discarded cards from our hand. When you run out of cards from your hand, that's fine. You don't have to keep discarding cards from your deck, but you'll have to draw back up, which can be bad. So this is what's neat about the game, is there's many cards that will allow you to pass different checks. Like, obviously, weapons help you pass combat checks, but the other items that are in the game will allow you to pass different checks depending on what it is. For example, Thieves' Tools might allow you to pass a dexterity chest. Let's say you find a chest, and you want to open that chest and get things. And there's other things in the deck, not just... you might find a treasure map instead of goblins. You might find this chest that you need to use those Thieves' Tool. There really is a ton of things in this game. So eventually you're going to try to find, in the first scenario, the big bad guy. You find him, you beat him, and then he runs away. Well, that's because once you find the henchman or the big bad guy at a location, you can try to close that location. Each location, once again looking here at the woods, has a different way that it's closed. Here you need to succeed in a wisdom or survival 6 check, and if you do that, the location is closed. You have to beat the henchman first. Once that's closed, the big bad guy can't run there. And so once you close all the locations, the big bad guy can't go anywhere. You beat him, then you've defeated him. And that's how you beat the first scenario. And if you're still alive, you can reset your decks a little bit using some of the stuff that you found along the journey and get ready for another match, which you probably want to do because the game is pretty fun. Wow. Obviously, what I just did there does not do the game justice because there's just so much to show you. And I was trying to show you all these different things at one time, and there's a lot. I think the artwork is good, if I think most of it's lifted from Pathfinder. Some people didn't like the pictures on the white backgrounds. I've heard many people mention that to me. That did not bother me, although the spells cards looked really good because they had these cool action pictures on them. What I really enjoy about this game is it gives me a very similar feel to a role-playing game, except you don't need a dungeon master. In this game, you go around and you're playing together. It's certainly a cooperative game, but it feels very strongly like a role-playing game. In fact, this is kind of, in my sense, a sister game to the Wrath of Ashardal and Castle Ravenloft systems, although this game is deeper. On the surface, it does not seem deep. It seems kind of, well, you just turn a card over and do the skill check. Yes, and the good thing about that is it makes it easy to get into the game. If you're a role player, this game's going to make sense, boom, like that. It will. So make a skill check for here. Oh, I know what skill checks are. But a lot of people don't know what skill checks are. And if you don't, it's not that difficult. You roll the die. Now, what is difficult is you're going to fail a lot in this game. And that's okay as long as you keep pressing towards your goals. You're going to fight monsters. You need to know how to best manipulate your deck. Hint for the first-time players. Use the decks that they tell you to in the back. It's awfully tempting to make up a cool deck of all these things, but you really don't know how all these things are going to work over the course of the game. There's just tons of variety in this game, and this is just the base set plus that pack I bought with the extra heroes. And each of the heroes is really cool. I don't know how long I will play through a campaign with this before I sit there and go, oh, let me try a different hero and see what they do. What is a magic user like? But I think it's cool that there's different ways to use the cards. Some cards, when you use them, go underneath your draw pile so that you can, it makes your draw pile bigger, which lets you last longer. Other cards, you just show them to use them. Other cards, you must discard. Other cards, you get rid of forever. Like a potion, you drink it, it's gone. You don't get that back. Other cards you stick underneath your character card, and you can have them at the end of the adventure, but you don't get them for the rest of the adventure because there's cards that let you pull stuff back out of your discard. There's a lot of variety. There's a lot of luck, rolling all the different dice. There's a good amount of story. Obviously, not the same amount of story that's going to be in a role-playing game, but this game allows us, like I said, to be without a dungeon master, and I'm really excited to see all these packs. This is going to seep money out of you if you want to keep buying packs. There is huge amounts of, I don't know what I'm going to see next. This is the game that Talisman wanted to be. This is the game where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, this is neat. How do I fight against this? And you can work together in this, and I really enjoy that. I really like the different spells and finding the chests, and it does all this in a good card game. Excellent game. Excellent game. It is not without its flaws. There are sometimes, I think, it's just probably you're going to get a situation of cards mixed with dice rolling. Doesn't matter how well you play, that you won't win. But I don't mind that because the game, the experience was so much fun. It will take a while for people who've never played role-playing games to learn their first game. And even those who have, the first game is definitely going to be a learning experience. But after that, there's so much in this box. I mean, it's a huge box. I'm going to have a hard time fitting this sucker on the shelf somewhere, but I am going to fit it on a shelf because it met my expectations. I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was a deck building game. It's not a deck building game. In essence, it's a role-playing experience in a box. Descent does the same thing, except it focuses on moving through dungeon and tactical movement and fighting. This does the same thing as an adventure, and I like both. This is the best adventure role-playing game in a box. Best dungeon, Descent, adventure, Pathfinder adventure card game. 2 thumbs way from far up.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!